Hey everybody, this is the Hollywood Rabbi. I'm standing out here on Sunset Boulevard in front of Hollywood High with this week's Torah Portion, and this week's Torah Portion is called Miketz. Now, Miketz means the end, and it symbolized the end of Joseph's prison stay. He was locked in prison for 12 years for a crime he did not commit. If you remember last week's Torah portion, Joseph got in trouble for interpreting dreams. He interpreted one of his dreams as to one day his brothers would be bowing down to him. His father did not like his interpretation of his dreams, and his brothers definitely didn't like it. They said, "Look, you're the younger brother. How could we be bowing down to you?" Jacob did not like it, and he told them to go see his brothers in the city of Shechem. So he sent him out there in this dangerous city to be with his brothers. And what do his brothers do is they decide to throw him in a pit. And then they're deciding about whether or not to kill him or not. And the older brother, Shimon and Reuven, they say, well, why don't we just sell him as a slave? So they sold him off as a slave, and remember, he went to the house of Potiphar. And Potiphar's wife tried to seduce him, but he didn't feel it was right for him to have an affair with a married woman, so he resisted her charm. And one day she just lunged at him, and her husband came in, then she blamed the whole thing on Joseph. That's how he ended up in a prison. And then he meets the official butler and baker for the king. And they're in the prison too. Now, if they made some kind of a minor mistake at work and they ended up in a dungeon, that's what happens when you work for the king of Egypt. You got to watch every step you take there. He interpreted their dreams, and he told them that the butler would be reinstated, and he was like a wine steward, and the baker, unfortunately, was going to be executed. So when the butler went off to take his job back in the king's palace, Joseph asked him if he could, remind anybody about his abilities to interpret dreams, that he would be available and not to forget about him. Well, a couple of years went by, and the king of Egypt was having these recurring dreams about 7 thin cows consuming 7 fat cows, and he was also having dreams about thin wheat consuming heavier sheaves of wheat, and he was being plagued by it. He couldn't figure out what these dreams meant. So the butler said, "Hey, I remember this Jewish person in prison was pretty good at interpreting dreams." So they went to find him. They cleaned him up. They put some new clothes on him. They brought him into the king's chamber. And the first thing the king of Egypt said to Joseph was, "I heard you were able to interpret dreams." And Joseph humbly said, "Well, it's a gift from God. If it wasn't for God, I wouldn't be able to do this. So actually, God is interpreting your dreams." So he told him about his dream about the 7 thin cows consuming the 7 fat cows and staying thin. And Joseph said, well, that means there's going to be 7 years of plenty in this region, and there will be 7 years of famine. So my advice to you is to get somebody to be in charge of the grain, save up as much grain as you can so that you'll have enough food for those 7 years of famine. So the king of Egypt listened to Joseph, but he said, who I'd like to make charge of that is you. And he made him viceroy to the king, made him in charge of all the storage houses of food. And then he also got him a wife. And he had 2 children, one named Manasseh and Ephraim. And a lot of people bless their children every Friday night and say, may you be like Manasseh and Ephraim, because he treated them equally and he ended the cycle of sibling rivalry. A lot of people ask, well, at this point, why didn't Joseph reach out to his family? Why didn't he contact his father? They could have sent a messenger. Why did he not do that? Well, you'd have to look at it from Joseph's point of view. When he was put in that pit and he was sold as a slave, he didn't know that the brothers were going to take his coat of many colors and put animal's blood on it and tell the father that he died. He just thought that they abandoned him. He thought that it was all a plan, that the father had set him up to go see his brothers, and that they were just getting rid of him, taking him out of the family. And there was a precedent for this happening. Remember, Abraham had 2 children, Ishmael and Yitzchak. And Ishmael was banished. He was from a different mother. Sarah didn't want him around, and Abraham agreed that he might not be a good influence on their son Isaac, and he sent them out into the desert. He banished them. Well, how about the next generation? Jacob and Esau. Esau is not considered part of the family. He was severed from the family. He's not considered part of the Jewish people. So he figured he was next in line. So why would he go back to his family? Why would he contact his family? 22 years rotting away, either as a slave or in prison. Nobody came to look for him. Nobody inquired after him. He felt he was being left. Who was his true father? He felt more of an allegiance to the Pharaoh. The Pharaoh gave him new clothes, gave him money, gave him importance. He valued his dreams. Not like his brothers and his father. They didn't value his dreams. They put him down. So he had no intentions on reaching out to his family, but he did see his brothers coming down because the famine affected the entire region of the Near East. So Canaan, or the land of Israel, was bordering on that area, and they were also being affected by the famine. So he saw his brothers, but he didn't want to let on who he was. And he gave his brothers grain, but he said, if you would like to have more grain, you're going to have to bring your younger brother Benjamin. So they said, so they had to go back and ask their father permission if they could bring the younger brother Benjamin. And Jacob initially was very much against it. He said, look, I've already lost my other younger son, Joseph. Now you want to take Benjamin from me? And they said, don't worry, we will take care of him. We will make sure that nothing happens bad to Benjamin. So Joseph wanted to test them. When they came back with the younger brother, he invited them over to the king's palace for a royal dinner. But what they didn't know is they had somebody plant the goblet and put it in Benjamin's backpack. And then one of the servants came in and said, somebody's stolen something from the king's treasury. Somebody stole something out of this room. They stole one of the golden goblets. And then Benjamin, they checked everybody's bag, and then it was time to check Benjamin's bag, and lo and behold, they found the golden goblet in Benjamin's bag. And Joseph said, you know what the punishment is for stealing from the king? You will be a slave for life. And who steps forward is Shimon. He says, don't take him, take me. Make me a slave. This is not his fault. He didn't do anything wrong. We're the ones that brought him here. And at that point, Joseph knew that his brothers had changed. When Shimon came forward and said, don't take Benjamin, take me as a slave for life, Joseph knew that brothers had changed. He couldn't take it any longer. The emotion took hold of him. He had to go in the back room and cry. And then he came out and said to the brothers, I have something to tell you. He says, I am your brother Joseph, the one you have put in a pit and sold as a slave 22 years ago. Now I am second in charge. I'm the second most powerful man in the world. And his brothers bowed down to him, just like he foresaw in his dream. And they said, are you going to kill us now? Are you going to take revenge against us? And he said, no, that's not my job. He says, I don't judge people. Only God judges people. There was a reason why all this happened. You made bad choices in throwing me in the pit. I don't condone it. I'm going to let go of the pain, and I'm going to understand that there was a plan all along, and whether you did something good or something bad, God's plan was to save us, and I was the means of doing it. And the fact that I could foretell the king's dream, that's why all this happened. So I could help save your lives and save the lives of people around here. And they all embraced. And at that moment, all that sibling rivalry and all that vengeance that had happened and all that dysfunction ended because Joseph decided to end it. And at that point, the people of Israel had become whole and complete. At that time, the cycle of dysfunction had ended, and the family of Israel became a complete family. We're going to find out what happens next week when Joseph meets up with his father. This is the Hollywood Rabbi wishing you all the best for a Shabbat Shalom, a peaceful Sabbath, and a happy holiday, happy Hanukkah, and happy New Year, one filled with health, happiness, and success, and most of all, love for all of you and for your families. This is the Hollywood Rabbi saying thank you so much for watching.